I've always loved the idea of a 5-year journal. It's essentially like a little snapshot of you for each day over a set period of time, which can make for a really nice keepsake. Especially because we don't necessarily realize how much can change across 5 years when we're going through it. And this can be a nice reminder. The problem that I've had with 5-year journals previously though is that they didn't feel like they were made for me. These were typically pre-printed journals that either had daily prompts or not, with paper quality that left much to be desired. Thus I'd get to like the 11th of January and put it down, never to pick it up again. Not this time though. In today's video, we're going to look at not only how to plan and make your 5-year journal, but also how to organize an action plan for making sure you actually use it. Our process here can be broken down into 5 key parts. 1, determining the purpose of your journal. 2 being picking the notebook and other materials that you want to use. 3 being determining the layout of each of the pages and the journal as a whole. 4 being the actual making of the journal, and then 5, figuring out how you'll keep up with it. Without further ado though, let's get into it. Starting with purpose is essentially my favorite way to start anything. Here we're really looking at what function do you want this journal to serve. Another way of asking this is, what do you want to use the journal for? The best part about making your own 5-year journal is that you can tailor it to you specifically. Some ideas of what you could use your journal for are as a way to answer or reflect on journaling prompts, as a place for memory keeping with journaling about the happenings of each day over the 5 years, as a place to reflect on your daily actions, including things like wins, challenges, and ways to improve, or something like gratitude logging. Rather than writing, you might want things in pictorial formats, so like a photograph taken for each day. Or you could use it for daily creativity challenges, such as a doodle a day, daily lettering, etc. The nice part about that last one in particular is that over time, it becomes super clear how you've improved. Whatever the purpose of your journal is going to be, determining this first can be really important, in particular with our next consideration, which is picking out your materials. Probably the most important material consideration will be which journal do you want to use. We can tackle this in 2 different ways. Either you already have a journal in mind and want to figure out how to use it for your 5-year journal, or you can figure out the number of pages you'll need for what you want to do and pick your notebook from that. I'm taking the approach of already having a notebook picked out, which is this A5 192-page journal from Archer & Olive. The extra pages in this one, compared to the previously more typical 160-page notebooks, is going to help with fitting a full year in here 5 times over. While the A5 size is what I'm going with, you can always use a B5 size if you want more space, or a B6 if you want something a little more compact. But the amount of pages here is what really matters. I don't want to turn you off, but we're gonna have to do some maths. Don't worry, it's gonna be straightforward and I'm sure you can do this. You got this. Grab your calculator and let's do some calculations. So starting with the fact that we have to accommodate for 366 days, so 365 for a typical year and then the extra day for the leap year, that means that if we're doing a day per page, we need 366 pages, which not a lot of notebooks, or at least none of the notebooks I've used before, actually have. If we instead change that to be 2 days per page, then we only have to use 183 pages. This is just calculated by taking the 366 and dividing it by 2. We can also do the same kind of thing for 3 days per page, 4 days per page, etc. It really depends on how you want to set up your pages. As mentioned, my journal has 192 pages, so I'm going to be fine with the 2 days per page, but I could have put it into a 160-page journal and gone with 3 days per page. Along with the number of pages, it's also important to consider the durability of your notebook. You don't want something that's going to fall apart in a few months of having used it, so I would encourage you to opt in for something that you're confident is going to last well with daily use. If you're planning on sticking a lot of things into the journal, you also want a notebook that's going to handle the bulk that accumulates from that. It's also good to note that you don't actually have to use a bound notebook for this either. If it makes more sense for you to go with a ring bound or disc system, or something else, go with that. The other consideration you'll want to make for your materials are those outside of the notebook. Things like, what are you going to be writing with? Will you need any adhesives to stick things in? For these, you want to be sure that they're going to last and not deteriorate over time. I recommend checking to make sure that you're using archival quality pens and acid-free adhesives, if possible, so that your journal will last as long as possible with its best quality. A consideration you might want to make for your writing in particular is, will the pen I'm using last the full 5 years? And if not, is it easy enough to find one that writes the same? This is my go-to writing pen, which I have multiple of, and it's easy to find. As it's my go-to, this also isn't an extra supply that I have to keep around, which is a bonus. The full set of materials that I'll be using from my setup is the A5 192-page notebook from Archer & Olive. If you wanted to grab yourself one, you can use my discount code JashiiCorrin10 for 10% off. We love savings. I'll be using 13 of the Zig Clean Colored dot markers, which I got from Stationery Pal. Again, I've got a discount code for that one too, so that one's JashiiCorrin for 12% off. I also grabbed the 05 Sakura Pigma Micron pen from there, so grab that discount on that one too. The Stone Grey Staedtler Triplus Fineliner, and then for filling in my journal, when I'm using it across the 5 years, I'll be using the Papermate Inkjoy pen. Picking your materials and then deciding on your layouts are steps that might be better done in the reverse order for you. As I knew which notebook I wanted to use for this project before embarking on it, the sequence of purpose to materials to layout made more sense for me. But if you're not sure which notebook you want to use just yet, it might make more sense to do purpose, layouts, then materials, effectively deciding on your layouts before finding a notebook that accommodates those. Getting into layouts though, the layouts that you use are very much dictated by the purpose of your journal. That's why we considered it first. This will also be dictated by how many days you're aiming to fit on each page. Something to keep in mind is that there are 366 days that you're setting up pages for. So we want something that's going to be easy to set up repeatedly. We're going to have a look at some examples of layouts for the purposes we talked about before, and you can use these as starting points for designing your layouts, or just copy them as they are. I've aimed to be quite simple with these layouts because you'd have to set up quite a lot of them, and we want something that's going to be easy to use across the 5 years. The first idea we have here is based on using your 5-year journal to respond to daily journaling prompts. You can see this is a 2-day per page layout, so we have the header, which describes which day we're looking at, a little space to write in what that journaling prompt is, and then a space for each of the 5 years to respond to that prompt. To accompany this video, we have a list of 366 journaling prompts that you can use if you wanted to set up a journal of this type, or if you just wanted to use it for the 1 year. A link to that one can be found in the description box below. Those are ready for you to print off and stick into your journal, or what you can do, like I've done here, is just write them in. The second layout we have is more for if you're using your 5-year journal for memory keeping. Again, this is a 2-day layout, so January 3rd, January 4th, and we have a little box for each of those days across the 5 years. Of course, we do want the layouts to be simple for you, so while this one looks fairly simple at a first glance, remember you have to set this up 183 times if you're doing 2 days per page, and that's a lot of line ruling. I've ruled the lines in here though, just so you can see how you'd section off the page for each of the different daily responses. The third layout was set up with the idea of daily reflection in mind. Again, we have 2 days per page, but instead of putting the header for the day at the top, I've put it along the side. We have a space for each year running across the page, and the little dot points here indicate where those years start. So 2023, 2024, etc. The idea here is that you could use that dot to denote what type of reflection you were doing. So maybe a little tick for a positive thing, a little cross for a negative thing, and maybe a little arrow for a way to improve. This is the layout type that I'm going to be using in my journal. The fourth layout follows the idea of using your 5-year journal as more of a photo diary. So the boxes that I've put in here for this 1 day of January 7th wouldn't actually be drawn out, but there'd be a place to stick in your picture from the day. Because it's only a 5-year journal, but there's enough space for 6 responses, I've just put a little bit of washi tape here. In theory, if you're sticking in a picture for each day into your journal, then adding the washi tape likely won't make a considerable difference. But you could of course turn this into a 6th space and make this a 6-year journal instead. Or if you wanted to only do a 3-year journal, you could have the space underneath each of the pictures for journaling or writing out about what that picture represents. Of course, technically all of these ideas could be used for a journal of a different length of time, not just 5 years. You can tweak it to make it 3, 4, more, etc. The 5th layout idea was set up with daily creativity in mind. So using each of these boxes to put in some kind of daily creativity. You could flip the journal and do this as a lettering thing, so writing in a word or phrase for each of the days to help you improve your lettering, or you could do it as a doodle a day or something similar. As said, these layouts are just ideas, but they could be a good starting point for deciding how you want to set up your 5-year journal. Now, part of the layout deciding step is not only the layout of each of the daily pages, but also any other pages you might want to put in your journal and the ordering of those pages. In my 192 page notebook, I'm going to be going with 2 days per page, which will only actually take up 183 pages. For the remaining 9 pages, I'm going to dedicate 1 per year to each of the 5 years as a place to summarize any particularly notable memories. I'm going to have a welcome or splash intro type page, and some kind of ending page. I'll also be putting in a then and again spread, which is 2 pages, which will fully fill up the notebook. This means that the layout of the journal as a whole will be the intro page, the then and again pages, the yearly summary pages, the daily pages, and finally the outro or ending page. With that planned though, it is now time to set up my journal. As mentioned, this layout here is the one that I'm going to go with in my journal, with some minor tweaks. So to make my setup way easier and faster, I'm actually going to make myself a little template for where I need to put the dots. To do this, I'm just going to take a spare piece of paper, mine's an old offcut from my journal, and lining that up with the dot grid on the page, I'll just mark in where the spacing dots are for each of those sections. Hopefully that makes sense, but this is going to make setting up the 183 iterations that I have to do of that spacing so much easier. No need to count them out, just line up my template with each page and put my dots in. Actually getting into the new journal though, as you can see, this one has a nice pretty internal cover because it's special collaboration between Archer and Olive and the Mint Gardener. And if we flip to the first page, this is where I'm going to have my intro page for the journal, or effectively, welcome to my 5-year journal kind of a thing. I am a little bit nervous about starting on this very first page, so I'm actually going to flip to the next one, and we're going to set up the then and now, or what I'm now calling the then and again page. So one side of this is going to be then, or the start of the journal, and the other side is going to be the again page, so re-answering the prompts that I'm putting on this page, but at the end of the journal. You heard right, yes, this journal page is going to have some prompts written on it, so it's effectively a snapshot of me at the start and end of this journal. To start off with though, I am just going in and writing the header, so then and again, and I'm also putting in what date I'll be filling those in. So the 1st of January 2023 and the 31st of December 2027, which feels like a really long way off. It's kind of funny how certain periods of time feel like that they're going to take forever, but then every year we say, oh my god, this year went so quickly. Anyways. Down the left-hand side of each page though is where I'm writing in those prompts. So things like, what's my total savings at the moment? What's a movie that I watched recently that I really enjoyed? What's my biggest goal right now? Or what am I worried about at the moment? The prompts that you use are up to you, but we'll have a look over the ones that I'm writing in once I've finished setting this one up. This style of page is something I've enjoyed using my journal over the past couple of years though. It's kind of just nice to see how things change on a very small snapshot kind of basis. So as you can see, the prompts that I went with were savings, weight, favorite song, food obsession, job, current goal, recently accomplished, movie enjoyed, book read, excited for, nervous about, regretting, hopeful about, want to try, recently tried, problem, fear, and want to buy. As said, these are just ideas, they're my personal prompts, use whatever you like, but I really like the idea of writing them once and then 5 years later writing them again and getting to compare the two. You could of course do this more as a journaling page, so rather than answering these prompts, just fill the page with your stream of consciousness and then have those 2 little snapshots as well. Flipping over though, as said, the next thing that I want to put in is a kind of mini calendar year at a glance type thing for each of the years that this journal will hold, just to write down any kind of memorable moments. As you can see from my post-its, this is 2023 and that's 2024. When I say mini calendars, I really just mean mini calendar boxes, or like boxes for each of the months. I'm not actually going to go writing any numbers in here. My hand doesn't need that. I don't need that. Also, there wouldn't be any space to write in those memories, so. To match the style of the journal, I am keeping this one super simple, so just using my Zig Clean Color dot markers to put in each of the headers for each of the months, just using the first 3 letters of each month's name. So Jan for January, Feb for February, etc. Each of these boxes are 8 squares across by 8 squares down, and I'm putting in the borders for this using my ruler and the Sakura Pigma Micron pen. Of course, mistakes do happen, so I did stuff up the spacing on this spread sadly, but it just means that my 3rd row of boxes are a little bit shorter than the other ones. It's okay, I only have to deal with it for the next 2 years. I'm sure I will cope. Or maybe nothing all that notable will happen in July, August, and September of those 2 years. I can at least say that I did get the spacing right on the next years, so we have 2025, 2026, and flipping over 2027, all spaced out the way they should be. As you can see though, January 1st is going to start here, so this is where we are starting our daily pages. You probably noted that I did use a different colour for each of the months of the year on these memory spreads, so I'm going to continue that colour palette into these dailies. So for January, we're going with that kind of pinkish colour. This one is just called pink, so putting in our dots first. Thankfully though, we did set up our little template, so I don't have to count and then get the dots wrong when doing this one. I'm going to bring it 4 in from the side, 1, 2, 3, 4, and put the dot in the 5th box. And then we can just line up that little dot ruler and put the dots in for each of the different spaces here. Nice and simple. See, if I had to do all of this counting myself on every page, it would really add up. It would take quite a while. Because this is going to be for 2 days, this is going to be January 1st, January 2nd, we can also put in the year numbers. So I'm just going to write 23 for 2023, 24, 25, 26, and 27. And then we've got 23 again, 24, 25, 26, and 27. Nice. So the page is going to get divided into halves, so top half, bottom half, and to do that division line I'm going to use my Staedtler Tri-Plus Fine Liner in that stone grey colour. I thought that using a grey line on each of the dailies would look a little nice, a little less heavy than a black line. We're going to need some headers, and by headers I mean like side headers. So turning my notebook this way, I'm going to write them here and here for January 1st and 2nd. So the first 2 days of the year done, now we just need to do 364 more. Sweet. Even a simple layout like this is going to take a while when you're doing it for every day of the year, and that's why it was so important to keep it super simple. Here you can see we're getting to the end of January, so the 29th and the 30th, which means that flipping over, there is going to be the 31st, and here is going to be February 1st. So we don't want to use pink for the entire page. We're going to need to bring in our next color, which is the red for February. So pink for this one, and then red for those 3. Bringing back our little dot ruler here. So the top 5 need to be done in pink, but not the bottom 5, because those are for February. Of course, you don't have to change colors for the months. I just kind of like that the journal is going to effectively be a little rainbow going from the start to the end with each of the daily entries. And again, this ruler is just making it so much easier to do this quickly, because counting all that out, like I'd stuff it up and then I'd have to fix it and it would be a mission. Much easier. Of course, mistakes do still happen though, but there is almost always a way to fix them. I do have a separate video on my channel of 18 different ways that you can fix journal mistakes, and I do encourage you to check that one out before you give in to freaking out about any mistakes. Thankfully, that's actually the end of my daily page setup. I have gone and filled in the rest of them, and as mentioned before, anytime the month changes, we change color from one to the next. So red to this kind of coralish colour for March, then into more of an apricot kind of colour for April, a yellow for May, etc. The last page we have here is my outro page, and what I'm thinking I'm going to do is just have it as a page to do some journaling once I get to the end of my 5 years, maybe just talking about what I learned from the experience or something like that. And the intro page that I had before, I think I'm going to treat as kind of like a then and again page, but I'm going to use it to put in a picture of me on the first day of using the journal and another picture of me on the last day of using the journal. So need to make sure that I take a picture of myself on the 1st of January. Another thing that I'm going to want to put in this journal though is a key, because I'm using so many different colors of pens, I would like to remember which ones they were. That key is going to get stuck on the inside cover here. So just taking my little ruler, and because the paper is thick enough, I can just flip this over and I'm going to put my little key on here and stick it into the front. This key is not only going to be for colors, but also going to be for the symbols that I'm using when I'm doing my daily reflection. As mentioned, the 5-year journal that I'm using is a daily reflections journal, so thinking about the wins, the challenges, the improvements that could be made. I'm also going to have a symbol for any significant memories, being an exclamation point, and I'm leaving a little bit more space for any other significant symbols as they come up. To stick this one in, rather than just sticking it straight into the cover, I actually wanted to flip out to the side of the notebook so that I can view it from any page in the notebook. For instance, if I'm working on this page here, I want to be able to see those symbols while I'm on this page, so I need it to stick out. To do this, what I'm going to do is take my little key and actually fold along the edge here. So just fold it in towards my writing. Trying to make that fold fairly even the whole way down. What's going to happen is that because it's going to want to stick out the left hand side, I need to run tape along effectively the back side of the paper. Or if you fold it to the front, I need it along here. Thankfully, I made my fold just wide enough to accommodate for my tape, so do make sure to keep that in mind when you're initially making that fold. Now what we can do is push that to the back. Just kind of position my paper here so that it will actually stick out properly. We don't want it too close to the edge, but we do want to see that text when we're on different pages in the notebook. So it's going to be pretty close in this case. That's looking pretty good. So we will peel off the backing of the tape and then carefully stick that down. So now that one can just flip out to the side. If you don't really like the look of this, you could also just put some washi tape on it. I think I'm going to put a little bit of washi tape on it just to make it look a little bit finished. The washi tape isn't actually doing anything here to secure the key to the notebook, it's just helping making it look finished. So the journal is set up now, but how am I going to make sure that I actually use it? I have a few tips for you here to make sure that you're making this a practice that you do daily. These steps are an application of the information in Atomic Habits by James Clear, and I do have a separate video on how to make journaling a habit, which can be found in the description box below. We're going to focus on 2 of the 4 steps to making habit building easier, so making it obvious and making it easy. To make it obvious, or to make the cue for filling in my journal obvious, we're going to use an implementation intention statement, which follows the structure of I will behavior at time in location. I'm going to put mine in the front cover of my journal so that I remember what it is. Having this clear instruction of when and where filling in this journal will happen is going to make me more likely to stick with it. I'm attaching this one in with some double-sided tape, and it's written on another offcut from a separate notebook. As you can see, my implementation intention statement is I will fill in this journal before getting into bed each day at my desk. Obviously, this won't quite be the case when I'm not at home when heading to bed, but for the vast majority of days, it will hold. The second way we're going to help build this habit is by making it easy. Ways we've already done this are by setting up the structure of the journal in full. I don't have to set up each day to fill it in. I'm also limiting the supplies I need. In fact, I could actually just assign a particular pen to this journal and keep it in the pen loop on the side here. And I will also be keeping it in the very easy to access location right beside my monitor on my desk. As mentioned, there are more tips on how to make journaling a habit, along with a free printable list on the related video that we have linked in the description box below. Our journal is set up, we have our implementation intention statement, and I don't know, I'm just really excited to get into this. I think it's going to be a really nice thing to look back on in the years to come, to see how I've changed over the years, what was going on for me, all that kind of stuff. This journal is going to be one of the ones that I'm using next year, and if you wanted to see my full planner lineup for the year ahead, then that one's at the top. Or if you wanted more new journal setup content, then the playlist at the bottom is where it's at. I'll see you over there.